Welcome to another Look Inside video. This video is going to be all about Comprehension Ninja. So Comprehension Ninja for Upper Key Stage 2, the Inference and Beyond versions. So these books publish or were published on the 11th of September. When I'm filming this video, it's in 2 days' time, but for the majority of people that watch this, it'll be afterwards. So very, very excited about these books. There's the Lower Key Stage 2 book that accompanies it. And in this short video, we're going to look at the Key Stage 2 version and what you're going to get inside. So let's just dive straight into it and just see some of the content that you're going to get with this book. So let's have a little bit of a look to start with. Now, if we just dive straight into the contents, I'll just zoom in here, we can see we've got a really comprehensive series of texts. And again, if you have watched the other video for the lower key stage 1, that's fine. You'll know that these books have fiction, we have non-fiction, and we have poetry. So there's a real blend of every text type that we need. And again, that's always in mind of the fact that we're trying to cater for children progressing through primary school, ultimately towards SATs and being ready for secondary school. So inference is a really difficult thing to resource in terms of time. So that's what this book's all about. It's taking the time out of finding high quality texts, which you can see here, and then all of the accompanying questions and answers and setup that's required. So that's what we're aiming to do with the Inference and Beyond books. So they're going to sit in or be able to be used within any reading system that you have in school, whether it's really well defined or teachers make up their own mind on what they're doing. These books can be adapted into any system. All right. So again, we've got a range of texts. You know, here you can see we've got texts by Maz Evans or Maya Godds. And we've got many, I won't go through them all, but many other well-known authors published by well-known publishers and so on. So they are great in terms of contemporary literacy, contemporary texts that we're going to use. There's a number of the texts being written by myself, mostly a bit of a fiction, non-fiction blend. As well as some core non-fiction that links quite nicely to the curriculum, as well as some poetry. So we've got everything really to give you a really comprehensive series of quality texts with some curriculum themes and poetry from, again, really well-known authors, diverse authors, ensuring that children really see text from different backgrounds, different cultures, different periods of time, which is just like what they're going to see in the SATs. Okay, so really comprehensive. Now, again, just to highlight this to start with, so as you can see here, we've got part 1 and we've got part 2. Now, in part 1, each of these texts, high quality text, each of these texts come with 6 or 7 pages of questions all about that text. So different inference style questions. So there's a huge amount of questions linked to that text. Whereas part 2, all of these texts only have one accompanying page, which is a full page of questions using all the strands. So they look a little bit like this. Okay. And I'll show you that here. Really fab. So let's have a little bit of a look at part 1. Going to be nice and quick running through this. Again, we've got a really comprehensive introduction, which goes through all of the different inference style questions that children are going to encounter or that you'll be able to access from this book, how to use it, gives you a little bit of a breakdown, which I'm doing now. It runs through all of the different inference style questions that are covered, and then we go into the text. Okay, so really nice layout. So these are going to photocopy sort of A3. So again, this is going to sit very nicely. When you think about SATs, children do have that sort of A3 style booklet, A4 page, and it's how they manage that as well. So I think there's some physical nuances to how we've got these texts laid out. So significantly larger texts, and then obviously the accompanying questions. So we have a text, and then the first series of questions are simple inference questions. So again, all of these questions have this, building this classic look at the paragraph beginning. And again, that's something that comes up in SATs all the time. It's a very common command within the question that children need to be familiar with. So the more children see these questions and the more they experience, they know that they have to go back to the text to find the answer to these questions. It isn't just a case of guessing. Some children may be able to remember, but that's often not going to be the case. So again, look at the paragraph beginning, wait there, Madra. So it would be prompt, and this is something that you can model on the whiteboard. There are electronic versions of these books available directly from Bloomsbury, which are great to purchase and then be able to throw them up onto the whiteboard and model these. Or you could just screen grab them, whatever it may be. Very straightforward. But again, I'd be modeling this to the children, wait there, Madra. So what are we doing at this point? Really instructional, ensuring the children know strategically, a little bit like maths, what am I doing next? So we're going back to the text, we're probably skimming paragraphs. My keyword here would be Madra. That word's not going to crop up particularly often. So wait there, Madra. How are we going to find that? There we are here. So we've got wait there, Madra. So the child will be showing the child, oh, that's how you do it. So we get back to there, we would read this sentence and we would find the evidence of the inference. So let's do it. Wait there, Madra. Look at the paragraph beginning. How can you tell that Madra is excited? So again, I'd be prompting children. We're looking for phrases, maybe individual pieces of vocabulary that link, that shows excitement. Okay, it's not going to say excitement, but it's going to show us. So again, we look here. Madra called ahead, wasn't listening as usual, ears down, tail wagging frantically. Okay, so there's some evidence there. The dog's ears were down and the tail wagging frantically. That sounds like excitement to me. Okay, they probably wouldn't need like an orchestra conductor's baton, but I think as long as the child had ears down, tail wagging frantically, that gets the mark. Okay, because that infers excitement. So really simple questions, but a really strong process that we can model to the children to ensure that when SATs come around, they just mop these marks up really simply because they've done these question types 1,000 times, because here we've got 10 sets of these questions and every one of the other texts have 10 questions as well. So there's lots to work on there. The next question types are sentence level inference. And basically these are those questions where the sentence that the child has to refer to is already written there in the question. So we can see that here. And again, that's very typical of SATs, where some of the questions want the children to go back to the text. Some of the questions have the sentence in the question for the child to refer directly to. And that's what all of these questions are. We've got some where the child is going to write the answer, some where the child has multiple choice, and so on. So we've got a few little variations. And within here, some of these questions are more vocabulary focused. Some of them are more phrase or clause focused in terms of the evidence that we want. So again here, there's a subtle inference, it's not necessarily obvious, but ears down, tail wagging frantically like an orchestra's conductor's baton. What animal is Madra? Okay, and again, if we go back to the text, we can make a logical assumption that it's a dog. Okay, if we've read the whole text as well, we can infer that even more generally, but we have a subtle image here as well. And sometimes there are clues in that's not even a clue, I suppose. But again, logical inferences. And again, I think that's a good question type of where, let's find it again. You know, what animal is Madra? That would be a good question where we can really start to teach children about those logical inferences based on what they've read and what they've seen and their experience of life in general. So inference as well is drawn from our experience within life. So our experience of going, well, what sort of animal sniffs the ground and wags its tail frantically when it's excited? Well, from all of our experiences, whether it's from watching TV, out in the real world, owning one, a dog is the logical answer. Okay, logical inferences. So that makes sense. So children are going to have to draw on all sorts of experiences, experience of the text, experience of life, to make these logical inferences. And again, you'd be able to suggest why it isn't a cat, or it isn't a cow potentially, or it isn't a horse, whatever it may be. So again, there's one question, and we've gone through two questions. There's so much to discuss beyond just resourcing inference questions. We then move on to, or we've got this suggests type questions. So again, multiple choice. Again, this is testing the child's ability to decipher between multiple statements and what they mean. So again, we're here, Madra, he called ahead. Madra wasn't listening as usual. What does this suggest about Madra's behaviour? Tick one. So again, what does this suggest? What is it telling us? And basically, what does this suggest is what does this infer? Just another way of saying it. He's always obedient. He's always distracted. He's scared of Senan, so you'd have to read the text to understand that question. And he doesn't like walks. All right? And again, the reason why we would do these questions regularly and model how to do it or how to answer them, is so that the children don't just see these question types and just guess. Okay, we don't want them to guess, because actually they're very, very straightforward. Again, it's that experience of life. It doesn't necessarily need to be logically on the text. Madra wasn't listening as usual. As a class teacher, I'd maybe be drawing an inference to a specific instrument, maybe a pupil, maybe myself. When Madra wasn't listening, okay, why aren't people normally listening? Well, it's normally because they're distracted by something, whether it be their phone, their friend, what's happening outside the window. So we can use that life experience to help us answer inference questions. And normally it's our experience of life that helps us infer correctly. Okay, so children need to experience that. They need to hear an adult explaining this regularly over and over again, and then applying it in a text with quality questions and texts. That's what we're offering. All right, so there's loads of those questions. And then we start to move into these questions that, again, children get, over, they tend to struggle with. And again, we get taken into the P methods and evidence and explain and all this sort of stuff. And ultimately, those strategies, for me, are applied because children and teachers don't have the resources to constantly experience it. So we need to put a bit of an acronym in place to go, right, well, you need to point, evidence, and explain. Well, children don't even understand what that means often enough because there's not enough experience. So again, here with 2-mark questions, a lot of questions are just asking children to provide 2 pieces of evidence. So again, look at the paragraph beginning. They're going to need to go back to that paragraph and explore it. Great modelling opportunity. Senan knew that dusk would creep up quickly. How can you tell that Senan enjoys walking with Madra? So within that paragraph, we're looking for 2 pieces of evidence that show Senan's enjoyment of walking with Madra. Okay, I don't know what they are off the top of my head, but great question. Okay, go back, find the evidence, bring the evidence back. And again, with these inference style questions, children, to get the marks, don't need to offer complete, wholesome written sentences. They just need to supply the evidence. Okay. Very, very simple. And again, with the 3-mark questions, very simple. So within SATs, we tend to not get both all the time. There's never that many of these 3-mark questions, but sometimes they are just 3 straight evidence-based questions. So how can you tell that Senan feels curious about the object that Madra found? So we need 3 pieces of evidence, 3 things that either happen, they say, they feel, they do, the evidence, curiosity. And again, the vocabulary within the question is important to explore. What does curiosity mean? It means they're interested, they're not sure about it. So we can rephrase the question so that children understand, well, what is it asking for? So again, basic retrieval of inference evidence. Very important that children get to practice that and see you modelling it. And then the final question is probably my favourite inference question style because it throws children a lot. And again, my big belief is that it throws children because they just don't see it enough. Okay, these questions, evidence questions, what impression? Okay, the what impression style question. What impression do you get? And the first bit that children fall down with is they're just not sure what it's asking. What impression? What do you? They're not sure what the question is asking them. Okay, and all what impression is saying is, what do you infer? What do you think about? Okay, how do you feel? So what impression do you get of the cliff setting in the story? And normally, again, we want to model this to children. Normally, this is 3 marks, and children either need to apply 2 impressions and 1 piece of evidence, or 1 impression with 2 pieces of evidence, along those lines, or they can get away with a variation of it. Ideally, they've got evidence to support both. But basically, give 2 impressions and using evidence to support your answer. So basically, this is the child saying, this is what I think or feel, or what I think the character thinks or feels, and this is my evidence to support it. So they're having to do both parts. And the impression is normally a single word, and children, because they've not experienced it often enough, don't realise that that's what they've got to do. Okay, it's a bit like column addition, long multiplication. You need to know the steps, you need to know the expectation, you need to have experienced it. So the impression is normally a single word. If you look at the mark scheme for SATs, the impression is a single word generally that a child needs to support. So very often these are very simple words like happy, sad, scared, excited. It is Key Stage 2 reading, So we're not looking for hugely complex inferences. There's one SATs question that I remember about the house, the old farmhouse with M Hughes or something like that. And, one of the questions is, what impression do you get of the house based on what it's written? And the impression is that it's old and one of the characters is a little bit scared or something like that. The inferences the impressions are very, very simple. And then all it wants you to do, and the evidence is some of the windows were broken and a tile was missing. And, when they looked through the window, it was dusty. It was very, very easy to evidence that it was old. But it's just the overall question, children's familiarity. What impression do you get of the cliff setting? It's probably something along the lines of, it's dangerous and something else. Okay. So again, it's dangerous. What's the evidence? Okay, it's probably, there's no offense, the cliff was crumbling. The sea was lapping up against the rocks. The rocks were slippery and covered in moss. Very, very simple. So the impressions are very, very simple. And again, once children get to grips with that and they see this question type enough over the period of 4 years, year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6, really they should be getting to what impression questions in the SATs and going, so easy, he's scared, he's tired, he's cold, it's old, it's dangerous, it's whatever it is, here's the evidence. And again, very, very simple. 3 marks as well, 3 marks. Lots of children don't get those 3 marks just because the only time they see those questions are in mock SATs where they get marked. There's maybe a little bit of feedback, but then because teachers don't have these questions readily available, and it's not a teacher's fault, because they took me a long time to find the text, to find the questions that would work, the parts of the text that would work. So again, these are available with every text. So we've got the next one, those what impression style questions, there they are again. Here's the next text, Oh My Are Gods by Maz Evans. We get to the last section, there's those questions again. So children are going to experience these again and again and again and again and again. And that's what we want. So really fabulous. I love these books. I know I've written them, but I love these books for what they offer. And then the final part is the summary and prediction section. So the other reading domains, we've got summarized style questions, we've got sequencing questions, and a prediction style question. So again, all multiple choice, very easy to explore with the pupils. So that's the part 1 section. So if we skim through and we make our way through to part 2 of the book, some nice poetry there, a little bit of the Titanic. So here we go. So we've got non-fiction text about Titanic, timeline, really nice. And then because we're in part 2, there's only one question page, and it basically has all the different question types that we've just been through. So you can use this for that sort of, I use this for a bit of informal assessment. I also use them in the run-up to SATs or for interventions, whatever it may be. So I would use part 1 to teach specific inference skills. So we'd maybe focus on, so if I jump back, I'd decide as a teacher, okay, this is my text, it's to do with the ancient Greeks, but within my reading lessons, I'd really be focusing on this question type to start with. Simple questions, simple inferences, going back and mastering how children go back to the text and answer these simple 1-mark questions. Okay, so that's how I would do it. I'd then move on maybe the next week or the week after, once everyone's comfortable, and we'd start to look at sentence level inference and so on. Okay, so I wouldn't be jumping between these. I would use the book systematically to work fortnightly, whatever your skill decides, to work through eventually into these 3-mark questions, maybe in the second half of the year. But that could then happen every year because you've got 2 books. Very, very simple. And then again, like I said, the second half of the book, we've got, so again, lovely bit of poetry here. First World War poems, A Stolen Life and Verdun. And then we just have a single sheet with all the different question types and a summary question at the end. So again, really good for informal assessment, ongoing assessment. Children could do this end of a half term, really struggle with this suggests. So in the next half term, I'm going to dip back into teaching them how we answer this suggests type questions. Or it could be that we're still struggling with summary or sequencing. I'm going to do a bit of sequencing next half term. So it really helps us inform. Again, we'll just nip to another one. Let's have a look. Here we go. It's quite a nice one. So the Danish Herald. So we've got a little bit of a mix of fiction and non-fiction, non-fiction style layout, fiction text in terms of looking at Beowulf and Grendel, written in a newspaper style. Really fab, can link into English topics, history topics, so much. And then again, we've got a single page of questions. So in here, we've actually got some evidence-based questions. We've got a 2-mark question, a 3-mark question, some summary, simple questions, and so on. So the books are really, really fabulous with lots and lots of usefulness within them, as you can tell. And then obviously we've got the answers and stuff at the end. So again, very useful. What I would just say as a little indicator towards these is obviously within Key Stage 2 SATs or any sort of test, when it comes to inferences, there's a huge mark scheme with varying levels of answer and mark and whatever it may be. Now that's not possible with these books just because of space. You'd rather have more questions. If we wanted really detailed mark schemes, we would have to reduce the book by, or the text in the book maybe by 4 or 5, which means you get less text, more detailed answers. I'm not sure what that's really what this needs to be about. So we do have answers. So again, for the 3-mark questions, again, there you can see here, evidence 3 marks. So we've got sort of one potential answer there, another potential answer there, another potential answer there. But it may be, as I always say, it may be that children, if it was a more comprehensive mark scheme, sometimes there are, maybe in these simple inferences, for example, there's maybe 2 pieces of evidence within the paragraph that demonstrate that. I may have only provided 1, but as a teacher, you can use that logical inference. So it isn't a case of the answer scheme being wrong. Sometimes with inference, let's just say that there really isn't enough space to have a really comprehensive mark scheme like you would in SATs within this book, because it's just not sensible really. But you can still see that we have well, there's lots and lots of answers in here, lots of answers to make life just fairly straightforward in terms of your time. So yeah, that's the book. I'm going to stop there. There's lots of fab texts. I genuinely love these books. I'm going to dip back out of this. So again, as you can tell, talking through the books, I absolutely love what they offer. They are incredibly useful. The texts are outstanding, and there's literally thousands of questions within a book. If I'd have still been in the classroom, which I'm not now, this book would have been something that would have been used most days, definitely every week, over the course of 4 years. Especially as an English leader, we can look at these and think, how do we resource and implement inference within the curriculum, within reading sessions? How do we resource it? That's pretty much how you're going to do it, okay? And again, even getting access to the texts by, like Maz Evans and things like that, it's not as straightforward as it sounds. So these books, I genuinely, I've written a lot of books over the years. These are potentially my favourite books to date, mostly because of how much I know children struggle with inference and how time-consuming planning, resourcing, assessing, delivering anything around inference can be, because it's not just as straightforward as going 10 retrieval questions on ChatGPT. It's just not that straightforward. So these books are really going to have a massive impact. And I know come Key Stage 2 SATs next year, I know I'm going to get a lot of messages off people going, our inference, the inference marks that children got because of the books and everything they've experienced over the course of a year, the next 2 years, 3 years, inference is just something that's, naturally embedded within our schools. So check the books out. In the descriptions below, there's, the usual links. You can get the books on Amazon, Bloomsbury, my website, wherever that may be. We've got a discounted bundle if you buy them both. I think it's £10 off. So you can get both of those books in your school for $39.99, $39.98, which, in the grand scheme of things is, and I know budgets are tight, it's probably going to be the best £39 that any school spends in terms of time, effort, energy, and outcomes. So if you need anything from me, drop me an email, get in touch with Vocab Ninja, and we'll help. We can get these books out to you as quickly as possible. So yeah, I hope if you have any questions about the books or you want to see a little bit more, drop me an email, andrew@vocabularyninja.co.uk. I'll respond pretty much the same day with answers to whatever you need. There are free samples on the website that you can download and have a little bit of a look through. But yeah, I hope you go and get these books because they are going to have a big impact. and I know that they're going to support everything that's going on in school when it comes to inference. So thanks very much. Keep supporting Vocab Ninja, and I appreciate you watching and engaging with everything that I do for you and for schools and for everybody at home and the pupils. So thank you.